in Benin City and, of course, other parts of Edo State, the 18 local governments. And I'm sure that you have been properly updated right here on the largest TV network in Africa. Many thanks to the veteran, Cyril Stoba, for the detailed interviews and, of course, updates from our colleagues on the field right there in Edo State. Edo Decides on the Nigerian Television Authority continues. We want to make sure that you get all that you need to know about what is happening and, of course, be properly informed. Just to quickly update you that the Nigeria Police Force says in another comprehensive operation, police operatives conducted synchronized raids and identified black spots on September 20, 2024. And this statement by the Force Public Relations Officer, ACP Olumoyiwa Adejobi, alleges that a well-coordinated effort led to the arrest of two key suspects who are members of a political party, Mortiga Godspa, who is 25-year-old, and Faraway Isaac, who is 27, both from Ufunama community of your Southwest local government area of Edo State. Now, the statement alleges that the suspects are connected to a larger network involving one Atiku and a kingpin known as the Boss, who were apprehended at a guest house in Epoma, where a substantial amount of cash and incriminating items were recovered. These items include a list of voters' names with corresponding monetary values, collection of pre-filled ballot papers, and a set of fake identification cards. The statement further says that 6 suspects, namely Suleiman Abdurrahman, Fatima Yakubu, Yusuf Aminat, 52-year-old, Salihu Lukman, 54 years, Sofianu Saratu, 32, were all arrested at Iboshe Secondary School, Auchi, for engaging in vote buying. Now, this group was found with a large sum of money, a cache of weapons, and a detailed plan outlining strategies for voter intimidation. Now, a fake journalist who claims to be a staff member of one of the leading television stations in Nigeria was also apprehended, further highlighting the extent of the criminal network. The force says investigations are ongoing and updates will be provided as events unfold. Of course, that report is from the Nigeria Police. Just to quickly let you know the efforts being put, by the Nigeria Police and other security operatives on the field, ensuring that there's calm and peace, if you like, in all the polling units where election is taking place. I'm not here alone. I have with me seated, of course, to look at the different reports we'll be getting from our colleagues who are still on the field. Of course, sorting and counting have begun, and they will be filling us with all the details that we need to know. I must welcome and, of course, appreciate Nick Dezang. You were here in the morning. Of course, I did watch you from home. Thank you so much for rejoining us for the conversation on Edo Decide. Just before we take some reports, I'd like to just find out from you, Nick, from all that you've heard, what you've seen, from the NTA, from our reporters in the field, and I'm sure you get feelers from those in Edo State. What's your impression about the whole exercise?
Well, given the kind of violent rhetoric that had characterized the campaigns and the tension in the state, I think the election went on peacefully. From the reports that I have watched on television and the ones that I've read in the social media, and also statements made by other NGOs such as Yaga Africa. However, there were some challenges, logistics challenges. Some of the polling units did not open on time, particularly the polling unit where one of the governorship candidates, voted, didn't open on time. Of course, the rains were all over the state, and in spite of the rains, the voters were not deterred, and there were also expressions of observations that perhaps the voter turnout was not as huge as before. But my observation too is that, the previous election in 2020 took place before voter access to polling units was created in 2022 by the Commission, where more voting centers were created to decongest the polling units. So perhaps because more centers were created and, congestion was not as prevalent as in the past, people just assumed that the voter turnout was low in the morning. But at the end of the day, when the figures are in, it is then we will have a very clear picture of how the turnout, in the election has been. And I think too that in addition to that, the EFCC was able to effect arrest of some vote buyers, which is very good. Of course, we are aware that some of the vote buying and selling had taken place even before the conduct of the elections. And any stakeholder in the process must be concerned about this phenomenon because it tends to be getting rampant and taking different dimensions. Each time the Commission and other stakeholders come up with ways to, to check it, the more the perpetrators devise other means. So they are very creative, and I think that the Commission and the agencies, anti-corruption agencies should up their game. They should be proactive. They should be able to project the kinds of things such desperate people can do and see how they can checkmate them. Otherwise, I think that the elections went well, and as at an hour or two ago, sorting and counting of votes had begun in many polling units across Edo State. So in the next 1-2 hours, collation should begin in earnest at the ward level and then the local government level. And if this is sustained, if this trajectory is sustained, then it means perhaps the state collation center will open towards the small hours of tomorrow morning. But the challenge also is this. Certainly the security agencies have done very well. And when I was following the last set of discussions, the last panel, I think the issue of massive deployment of security agencies arose with regard to off-cycle elections. And you see, my own experience since off-cycle elections began is that when you have an off-cycle election, politicians, desperate and unscrupulous politicians, also deploy all sorts of methods to subvert and scupper the election. And for you to now checkmate that, you need to have huge deployment of security agencies. And most of the time, too, these elections are preceded, by violence. If you look at what happened in the past in Anambra, in fact, successively in Anambra, in the past 2 or 3 election cycles, each governorship election is preceded by a lot of violence. And at one point in Ekiti, we had that kind of situation as well. But anytime we have a huge deployment of security agencies, it tends to assure the people, that they are safe. And that gives them the confidence to come out. And it is when also you are doing a general election, you discover that you don't have the benefit or the luxury of deploying so many policemen at one place. They are thinly spread. But so also are those who perpetrate these malfeasances. They are also thinly spread. But in the case of an off-cycle election, they are concentrated and saturated in one place. Each party will inaugurate a campaign council. And in each campaign council, there will be more than 20 big wigs of that political party. And each person coming with his own supporters, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And when you put all that in the mix, each political party, and if you have, like, in this instance, 18 candidates contesting, and each party inundating the state with its own campaign council, you can just imagine the scenario. So to that extent,
those who would argue with you would say that despite being an off-cycle election, there has been an increase in the number of security operatives. So let's be specific now, with the police deployed to Edo State. In 2016, 25,000 were deployed.
Yes.
In 2020, the number rose to 31,000.
Now it's 35,000.
Now it's 35. So
minus other security agencies
operatives,
making 8 plus 8,000.
Exactly. So,
Yes.
some people who would criticize criticized that move. Of course, and I'm sure you saw a report where, one of our reporters talked about in a particular poll unit there was no, policeman,
yes, but
being present.
You can also see that there's an uptick, there's an upscale in the violence. In 2020, certainly there was tension in Edo. There were incidents of violence before the conduct of the election. As I said earlier on, at one point, even at INEC, we were not so sure that the election will hold. And we now had to resort to other stakeholders to prevail on the candidates to, sheath their swords, literally. And with this election, you could see that there was an escalation. So where there's an escalation of violence or the possibility of violence, there will be a concomitant escalation of security agents on the ground. You will now have to have more boots on the ground to assure the people that, look, this election, we are going to be on top of issues. And I think that was the disposition of the security agencies, as exemplified by the AIG.
I'll pause you at this point, Nick Dzang. Of course, I'll get back to you, talk about some of the issues that you have mentioned, and that's, for example, voter inducement, and some other issues that have come up as a result of this election. But let's quickly take this report now. Sorting and counting of votes are ongoing in various polling units in Edo State, and here's a compilation of sights and sound.
PDP. 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 APC. APC. PDP. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
PDP. 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 APC. 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 PDP. 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 APC. APC.
Where is that?
They can't bring it. You said? You're not there.
It's not there.
That's what it means. That's what I'm talking about. One person that was not accredited.
She was already given a ballot.
Your delegation failed.
No.
on that, we'll use that one as spoiled. Is that the spoiled one? Yes. Why do you still have 103? Not the spoiled one now. Wait.
No, see, the mistake that it would have been 104 since there is a spoiled one recorded here. It would have been 104.
104, not 103. Can you make a
No.
It would have been 104.
There's a problem. So, but in terms of the party number,
Yeah, it corresponded.
it's correct because if you manage.
Sorting ongoing at Ward 2, Unit 3 in Ewohimi, Esan South.
Across Edo State, of course, you can see that counting has begun, and for some places they are done counting. You can see that the result sheets are already being filled and all of that. I'm sure from the filling of results, it will be uploaded to IRF. That's the assurance we got from INEC, and anyone from anywhere in the world can, of course, view the results, what went down in Edo State today. So back to you, Nick Dezang. You were giving your own overview of, what transpired in Edo State in the early hours. Of course, we're yet to see what's going to happen, as the polls, of course, closes in few hours and all of that. And, we'll begin to get results. Now, you did make mention of vote buying, and of course we saw reports earlier when Sarah Stober was on. Some of my colleagues on the field did talk about, or rather those interviewed, they talk about vote buying still being an issue. Someone said it's now spiritual, such that the voters see those buying while the policemen, or if you like security operatives, do not see when such transactions take place. So I just want to find out what you think about vote buying. But let's begin from the beginning. Voter inducement doesn't start on election day. It starts before election.
That's why I'm coming to. And perhaps that's why they are attributing a spiritual dimension to it. In time past, when it began at the polling unit, level. And at that time, I can say that even the commission was taken aback. I was at one of the elections where that took place, and in that time, we used to go for elections several months ahead of the conduct of the elections. So like the Edo governorship election, which is taking place today, staff of the former Public Affairs Department, which later transformed into voter education and publicity, gender, and so on, would be on ground about 2 months ahead of the conduct of the election. And we use the occasion to do voter education, to accredit journalists, and to have a feel of how the elections are going to pan out. Because we were moving from one local government to the other, interacting with the people, mobilizing the people, doing voter education, and it will give you a sense of how the elections will turn out. And in that state, I don't want to mention the state. I and my former director, I was the deputy director then, we were shocked when at the collation center, the results did not reflect what we had sensed during our stay. And I had been there 3 months prior to the conduct of that election. And I had been to all the local governments in that state. I had interacted with stakeholders, I had interacted with journalists, and so on. And we couldn't believe what happened. But at the end of the day, we followed up and investigated and discovered that a humongous amount was deployed, at most of the polling units except 1 or 2 local governments where one of the formidable candidates had fiercely loyal supporters. They could not dare to do that in those areas. So they avoided those areas, and those were the areas that he won the election at the end of the day. So at that point, when they started, they were doing it at the polling unit level. So now INEC devised ways to counter that. But subsequently, they now began to do them in advance of the conduct of the election, particularly during the conduct of off-cycle governorship elections. They would do it weeks and reinforce them. They would take the form of wrappers being given to women, money being given to and in the case of Edo, there were reports of monies being doled out at campaign venues, for example. So this is systematic and done ahead. By the time EFCC and ICPC deploy, they would have already visited the whole thing. And maybe it will just be those who might want to reinforce the game at the end of the day who will be apprehended. And there will be the small fries. There will not be the high-profile perpetrators. And you see what we've always said is put in place the Electoral Offences Commission and Tribunal so that we can effectively apprehend and prosecute perpetrators of electoral offences to the full extent of the law. But as it is, the commission is hamstrung. It does not have the resources. It has one of the best set of lawyers in any of the MDAs in the country. In fact, they have a number of senior advocates of Nigeria now. But the number of lawyers they have are few, and then they don't have the resources to do the prosecution. Also, in some instances, INEC staff are also culpable. So how do you prosecute your own staff? So you need another body that is independent of the commission, which can now do this job and visit sanctions remorselessly on perpetrators. So that is the shape it has taken.
From what you're saying, it's going to be a long way before we get
it will be, and you see matters are also worsened by poverty. And the fact that politicians also weaponize poverty. They deliberately pauperize Nigerians so that they become vulnerable to being bought over. If, for example, it's challenging for anyone who has, for example, not seen 20,000 in 1 year to reject such an offer. But I think also we need to continue to do a lot of voter education. We need also to enlighten people to appreciate that when you allow yourself to be bought, it means you have been bought in advance. And whoever is coming to office has
doesn't
no
owe you
commitment.
anything.
It has no commitment towards you.
All right. Thank you very much, Anik Dezang. I have to pause you. Of course, I'll get back to you. I understand that I have Faith Nwandishi joining us now for the conversation. Executive Director, Center for Transparency Advocacy. She joins us via Zoom all the way from Benin. Faith, it's good to see you. How is Benin?
Benin is calm. It's been raining, but it's bright now. It rained cats and dogs in the morning, and I'm happy to say that now it's bright out. The election has been peaceful so far, aside one case that was reported to us where people went to snatch the ballot, and aside that, it has been very peaceful.
Where exactly did that ballot snatching take place?
It happened in the Ikoboka local government area in a polling unit 7 Ward 6 in Nyai Primary School. Yes, Ward 6 Unit 46. That's not in Nyai Primary School, Ward 6 Unit 46. That's where the ballot snatching happened just after the close of poll. And incidentally, it's in the Ikoboka, the same Ikoboka where earlier in the day, EFCC officials arrested some politicians who were vote trading. That happened in Nyai Primary School, was 6 polling unit 7. That's in the South Senatorial District where it happened. But generally, election has been peaceful since morning. The rain disrupted the election earlier, but after the rains, people also started coming out and the elections continued. So there's been respect for voters. There's not been any form of intimidation, even coming from observers that we observe across the 18 local government areas. I went out personally. In the morning, I went to a particular polling unit in Ego local government area and found that there were no security agents there. We actually escalated that. There were 2 INEC officials in the place with about 234 registered voters in that particular polling unit. I went there personally under the rain and found there were no security agents in that particular place. In Obia Northeast, where we were earlier, there was a number of turnout of voters. We had 3 polling units in that particular primary school. One of the polling units had about 76 registered voters. But by the time I was leaving there at about 10 a.m., about 50 people had voted in that particular polling unit. Though there was another polling unit that had over 2,000 voters, we didn't see up to 100 people voting by the time we left that particular polling unit. And then the discussion you had about vote buying is in all of the polling units, all of the results and reports we are getting. One of our observers reported from the Edo Central that while the election was going on, one of the party agents stood at the middle of the queue and shouted that his party will pay anybody that votes for them 20,000 naira. And that kind of disrupted the election for a bit until things normalized and they were able to continue the voting.
What happened to that person who screamed that his party would pay 20,000 naira to whoever votes for his party? What happened?
Nothing happened. Nothing happened. And that's what we are saying, that the security agents are not playing their role on election day. They seem to be treating electoral offenses different from the way they treat offenses on non-election days. So the Constitution and the Electoral Act talks about the Police Act talks about the police arresting, any situation of criminality that happens. And that is their number 1 mandate. But when it comes to election, the security agents decide to treat electoral offenses differently from the way that they treat criminal offenses and other things that they do. So, and this is where we need to, because when such things happen, you expect that the police or the security agents around will be proactive in handling the issues. They expect that the INEC official who is busy at that time administering, accrediting voters, administering ballot papers and ensuring that the people are there, they are the ones that they expect to come to tell them that an electoral breach has happened before they can take action. We need to address this. And I think the media also should help us to address it, because when you have security agents in a polling unit acting as if they are observers in a polling unit, they see these things happen. For instance, do you know that politicians even now respect observers much more than they respect security agents? Because as an observer, you are going to the field and you notice that this is happening. If you are walking towards them, you will see that either they will disperse or they will stop whatever they are doing. But they don't do that when they see the security agents. They carry on as if nothing is happening. But when they see an observer coming, I was in a particular primary school and I noticed that when vote buying was going on, I tried to investigate, to walk around, and they saw me coming. Before I could even finish speaking with my colleague, they had dispersed. That's to tell you that they understand the role of observers. And if only that the security agents could play the same role, I'm sure whatever situation that they find, I'm sure that the kind of impunity that we've seen does not always happen.
All right, Faith, thank you so much. I have so many questions for you, but let's begin with the aspect of vote buying, which you have mentioned. Compared to previous elections, let's be particular with Edo State now. Since 2016, let's just look at that. In 2016, of course, I did see, vote buying happen, of course, maybe 1,000, 2,000, and of course, there were reports in that regard. In 2020, we're hearing of 3,000, 5,000. Now we're hearing of 15,000, 20,000. Tell us, is this the worst that we have seen in terms of vote buying and in the conduct of security officials? You have pointed fingers at them not doing the needful even when they are present. Would you say that this is the worst?
Well, you can never say that this is the worst, because we have another election coming. In 2016, when this issue of vote buying started, it actually started from Edo State, and we thought it was a joke. People were selling their votes for 1,000. In fact, we saw, because I was here in 2016 to also observe the election, what you will see then was people will run out of their houses and say, oh, they don't give me 1,000. Oh, I heard say they give you 1,000. I beg, make I go vote. Who they give the money? Make I go collect my money. So it was 1,000, 2,000. By 2020, it went up to 3,000, 5,000. Now we are looking at 10,000 naira and above. You know, you can imagine if you are a household of 5 voters, eligible voters, and 10 of you come out to vote. The thing is, it starts from Edo and then goes on to other states. When Edo was giving 1,000 naira, the next election we had Ondo, Anambra, and all of those other elections. By the time it became 5,000, and even before it came back to Edo 2020, that was 5,000. It was already increased in other places. So it's like, this is a testing ground. People want to hear what has happened. How did it go? What did it not go? We even had a colleague who was able to, you know, they come with a bag of money in those places. The security agents know them. We were coming from one Oredo, very close to Santana Market on Sapler Road. We were coming back. We stopped, you know, to look at, and there were security agents there, very close by. There was a transformer there. And then, you know, we were just having a conversation with them, and we were saying, oh, this is peaceful. What's happening? Peaceful. Nothing is happening here. And we knew. We don't say, oh, you know, like that transformer, nothing is happening there. Not vote buying is happening there. They started laughing because they knew what we were saying. You know, so those are the kind of things that you see happen. And I don't think this is going to be the end. The only thing we need to appeal to, even if you look T-shirt, this T-shirt that don't sell votes, and people are looking at that. I'm wearing this into the polling unit, and people are looking at don't sell your votes, and people are saying, now they talk now, oh no, I must sell my vote. You know, prior to the election, we went and people were saying, oh, they are going to sell their vote. Now, what we saw happen again was that people would come onto the field, and then they are looking for the person who is holding their card. We had that intelligence prior to the election that the politicians were collecting the voters' card of people, and we assigned them to a particular person in the polling unit where they will vote. They will go to collect the card. So we saw that happen today.
All right. Faith, I'm sure you have seen so much, and we really want to, you know, have a feel of all that you have seen and heard. But let's look at the electoral umpire now, INEC. You've pointed fingers at the security operatives and even the conduct of the voters themselves. How would you rate the performance of INEC today?
I would say that INEC performed very well, because even though some of the polling units we went to, they didn't start election at 8:30, but as soon as election started, the beavers worked perfectly well. At times, the people who were being accredited, I saw that in some of the polling units, we had between 1 minute 35 seconds for people to be accredited if they were using their fingerprints. But if they were using their faces, it's just between 30 seconds to 50 seconds to get people accredited. And then the entire voting process for an individual, from the time of accreditation to the time the person is putting his or her ballot paper in the ballot box, it was taking an average of 1 minute, 50 seconds to 2 minutes to do. And it was going very, very fast in those places. So very few cases of people that couldn't be accredited, and we saw that they were old people. You know, those people who had already had issues with their fingerprints, the machine could not pick their faces, and there were very few. In a case where you have about 30 voters who have voted, you have just one person who is having issue with the beavers. And then that process went on seamlessly. And now we have been monitoring the upload of results on IREV. Before we started this interview, we had over 70% of results already uploaded. And before I started this interview, I was following up on the results already uploaded and the ones that were sent to us by our observers, and we are looking at it, and we saw that they are the same result that is being uploaded. So if at 5 p.m. we have over 70% of results uploaded so far, that means...
When you say 70% Faith, Faith, do you mean across Edo State or in a particular local government?
No, across Edo State.
Okay, fantastic.
monitor it. You can actually monitor it from the studio on the IREV portal. That is the INEC result viewing portal. You can actually monitor it. We are following up. We have people in our situation room who are following up. I am also following up to see.
So now, Faith, if you say by this time, let me just quickly confirm that this is 16 minutes past 5. Yes. If you say by this time 70% of the results have been uploaded on IREV, would that mean that the voters that came out today were fewer than the number that came out in 2020?
Well, we will not be able to ascertain right now the total number because we have not done that collation by ourselves. We're just looking at the upload of the results, where it's coming from. We're also checking to see that it is the actual result and not pictures and other things that have been uploaded, but results from polling units that are coming. We're following up. We have over 4,000 polling units in Edo State, and over 2,500 results have been uploaded so far. And that's something about that's something we are happy about, and we hope that at the end of the day, perhaps this could actually be the fastest result that will be declared in Nigeria. If at 5 p.m. we have seen that results have been uploaded, perhaps maybe before midnight or before 8 p.m. we can have 100% of the results uploaded, and that will mean INEC going ahead to announce and declare the results.
All right, Faith, I actually asked you that question about, comparison as regards voter turnout and the speed with which results are being uploaded at the moment. Because, of course, if the voting centers, looking at the number of registered voters in Edo State at 2,629 and 29 million, and we know that 2,249,000 actually have their PVCs. So if that number came out to vote today, of course, you'll be surprised why at this point you already have 70% of the results already uploaded. In terms of voter apathy, I want you to tell me what you perceive. I know you may not have the true facts now until the results are. We'll get to see the numbers and all of that. But, I just want you to tell me what you perceive, could have played out today. Because in 2016, we had 1.9 million voters in Edo State, and 622,039 actually took part in that election. In 2020, we had 2,210,000 registered voters who actually picked up their 1.7 million picked up their PVCs actually, and just 557,444 of them voted. So from what you saw today and the reports that you have from across Edo State, would you say that more people came out to vote? Would you say that voter apathy has reduced in that state?
No. We still, before going into the election, we had issues. We had our concerns around voter apathy. We actually projected that perhaps when results are calculated and people who came out, we should be looking about 30 to 35% voter turnout, considering also that we're just the Edo election, like I said, you're looking at the total number of persons. And in some of the polling units we went to, like the one in Obia Northeast that we went to, there was a particular polling unit that had about 76 voters. And as at the time I left there, over 50 persons from that 76 had voted. So, but you cannot use that one polling unit to say, okay, there was voter turnout. Because in that same polling unit, another unit had about 2,305 voters. But as at the time we were leaving, there were just a little bit less than 100 people that had voted. So there are other places we went to. We have, there were about 94 voters. By the time we got there, close to 12 noon, there were only 16 voters who had voted in that place. So there's still a lot of voter apathy. People need to realize, I think that it is also like the first statement that I made earlier, to say that there's a lot to be done in voter education, getting people to understand the power that they have. So if we get between 30 to 35% or more than that, then that's what we will get, but we hope that more people will be able to do. And you know that INEC before the election had also come out to say about 84% of registered voters collected their PVC. So when we are looking at the total number of people who have collected their PVC, we're not looking at the total number of registered voters, because you cannot vote without a PVC. So we'll be basing the total number of people who came out to vote on the total number of people who collected their PVC. So that 35% I was talking about was actually 35% of the total number of people who have collected their PVCs. The issue of voter apathy is still there, and we need to really do something about it.
Exactly. Of course, Faith and Wandisha, I want you to stay with me. This conversation continues, but I want to quickly take my colleague who is on the field to give us an update of what is happening in Ego Collation Center. Anwili Okolo, I can see you. If you can see me or hear me, I'd like you to tell me what's happening at the Collation Center.
Hello, Aaron. Good evening. I cannot see you. I know you can see me, so it's good to hear your voice. Yes, I am at Egosa Grammar School, the Collation Center for Ward 9 in Ego local government area. Ward 9 has about 44 polling units, so we're expecting, the 44 polling units here this evening. They're already trickling in, bringing in their materials. All electoral materials that were used will be brought back here. And then Egosa Grammar School also happens to be the collation center for the local government as well. So after the collation at ward level, the collation for the local government will commence. So would also expect the results from 10 different wards under Ego local government to converge here this evening.
Now, I want you to tell me, what's Egosa Grammar School looking like this evening? Can you see security operatives there, people conducting themselves, properly? Is there peace and calm at the moment?
It's pretty peaceful. Everyone is just going about their duties to make sure that they turn out the votes right. People have come out to cast their vote. Now it depends on the officials to make sure that these votes are presented the way they were cast. So they're just going about their duties. Security personnel are here to make sure that everything stays calm and it just goes peacefully without any frenzy or chaos. And it's been smooth and seamless so far from my observation.
All right, thank you, Anwili. Of course, I'll get back to you, but just a quick one. I want to find out, I'm sure you, saw some polling units dispatched, to that collation center before you got there. Did you see, the results as collated at the polling units being updated to IREV before they moved to Egosa, or there were issues with the updating of results to IREV?
We didn't notice any issue. Most time, the two polling units I was at, it was manual. After the party agents signed, they collected on their result sheet and then started moving down here. So no issues have been observed actually in all the polling units that have been. The beavers worked fine. The IRF process seemed, okay. So, and then the party agents were all on ground to make sure that, okay, checkmating things. So if there was an issue at all, they...
All right, looks like I lost that connection with...
We didn't observe any.
All right, many thanks, Anwili. We'll stay with you as you get more updates. Please let us know. Well done. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
All right, that's my colleague Anwili Okolo, who has been on the field, if you like, since yesterday, of course, trying to make sure that you get all the details as regards to the election. I'd like to get back to Faith now. Faith Wandisha, I'm sure you're still with us. Before I joined Anwili, you were talking to us about voter apathy still being an issue in Edo State. But, I'd like to find out what you think about fake news and disinformation as regards to this election in total. Just some hours before the election yesterday, we saw some reports in some, if you like, unaccredited media outfits, of course, not on the NTA, that some, candidates in this election have stepped down. We've seen all kinds of news flying up and down, stories of, in a particular party being arrested and all of that. What would you say is the role of fake news and disinformation in this election? Has it, helped in any way?
It has not helped. It has not helped. It has really. It's also one of the causes of this issue of apathy that you have. For instance, the Inspector General of Police says they are bringing 35,000 police officers to Edo State. And 2 days before the election, you see police officers everywhere. People are having different perception around the reason why you have too many police officers coming to Edo State or coming to any state for that matter for election. And some of them will say, oh, I don't want to come out so that they will not mistake me in case I make a mistake or I do this. I don't want to be arrested. And so they stay at home. It contributes also to that. If only the gladiators would play according to the...
All right, looks like I lost that connection. Faith and Wandisha, we want that connection to be clear.
So,
okay?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Please go ahead.
Okay, so that's something that we need to... yesterday, there was this fake news. I had different people calling me, oh, what is this, what is that? But luckily, we were able to confirm that it was actually fake news. We had some of your reporters that were with us at the time this news came. They went for the press briefing, but at that time, we already knew that it was fake news. And you see also, prior to the election, one of the things that hit up the polity is this idea of bringing things that had happened like in the year 2000, 2016, they bring it back to look as if it just happened. And you know, in these days of AI, some people can clone anything, change anything, use anybody's voice, and it's not really helping. And that's why we're happy with news channels like the NTA that ensure that whatever they put out there is verified news. We need to do more and be deliberate about the kind of news that once there is something out there. And then we also need to find a way to penalize people who unnecessarily hit up the polity, you know, sharing fake news. The press statement we issued yesterday, we talked about misinformation and disinformation as one critical thing that is derailing the electoral process and not helping us at all. It is impacting on voter apathy. It is also impacting on the outcome of the election. So people should be penalized and punished for propagating and projecting fake news.
All right, thank you very much, Faith. You see, I like the sound of your voice, so I want you to stay with me and, of course, tell me what you have seen and heard in Edo State. I'd like you to speak about ethnic politics now quickly. Of course, build up to this election, we did, see in different quarters, whose turn it is to lead Edo State. And I mean, some political parties also, took the part of zoning, making sure that, they fielded candidates from a particular, sector, or if you like, a zone of Edo State. I want you to tell me, do you think it's an improvement for us, for us to go the way of ethnicity when it comes to politics? Or we should think about competence and then being on the field today, do you think that people voted based on their ethnicity or based on who they thought is competent to lead Edo State?
So, if I follow the politics in Edo State, especially I grew up here. I did my primary, tertiary, secondary, I was here. I grew up here and I know a little bit of here. But from 1999, if you look at what has been happening, some political parties have been zoning. Take Delta State, for instance. They have always zoned it around the 3 senatorial districts. And they have tried to do that here in Edo State. But what has happened is that in Edo Central, where you have predominantly the Esan people, have not been able to field a candidate from 1999. The only candidate they had then was Professor Osumbo, who they caught, and that's why we are even having these successful elections in Edo State, was Professor Osumbo, who the court removed and gave the seats to Comrade Adams Osomole, who is from Edo North. So you had the Comrade Adams Osomole, who was governor. The only other time also that somebody from Edo Central was governor was far back in the days of UPN and the time of NPN and UPN, when Professor Ambrose Ali was governor of Edo State. He's from Edo Central. And you know that this issue of ethnicity also played out seriously in 2020 when they had that conversation and they came to a compromise. They had to give and take. And they agreed that they were going to zone it to Edo Central. You had Chief Lucky Benedion, who was from Edo North, and you had Shomole, who is from Edo. I mean, Lucky Edo South. You have Shomole from Edo North, and you have Obaseki, who is also from Edo South. So they had that gentleman or gentleperson agreement to say, okay, this is where the can come from. That is the politics. That is what we now. So perhaps what they do is you go to these zones and you bring out the best of the best, because it also helps to calm down some nerves. People don't feel that they are left out of the governance of a state they are part of. People don't feel that lies. People don't feel that whatever we are just completing the numbers without letting it go. So, and also to go out to the field, the sentiment is there. People are saying, oh, okay, it is our turn. We have to feel a part of this. In fact, somebody was saying, how can we continue to be the second-class citizen in a state that we all say we are part of? And you know that you have strong ethnic groups in Edo State. For instance, in Edo North, you have the Afemai people, you have the Onwan people, and predominantly in Edo Central, you have the Esan, and then you come to Edo South, it's the Edo, that's the Benins and all of that. So the issue of rotation in our address that issue of inclusion. I only wish that the way they discuss it, the commitments that they give in doing this rotation, they can also think about rotation and allowing women also the seats, so that we can have complete inclusion when we are talking about that. But if you ask me, I think the best actually should come irrespective of where the person is coming from, whether from any tribe, or if the person, everybody feels this person can deliver, this person can lead us, this person can represent us. Because at the end of the day, it is the citizens who decide who they hire and who they fire. When we get to that understanding that we have our ballot paper, our ballot card, which is the PVC, that is our right to hire and fire, then issues like vote buying, voter apathy would have been taken care of, and we will know that we are really in charge.
All right. Thank you so much, Faith. We're still in charge as far as the broadcast of Edo Decides is on. That's the Nigerian Television Authority, of course. And you know that I cannot have a conversation about politics without talking about women. And so I'm going to take you up on this. In 2020, we had 14 candidates and we had 2 female candidates. This time around, we have 18 candidates and just 1 woman. Mm-hmm. Faith, where are we headed? Do you think we stand a chance?
I think we need to retrace our steps and maybe go back to the drawing table and discuss. That's what I'm saying, that if we have agreed, politicians have come to an agreement for the rotation around the ethnic groups and senatorial districts, they should actually think about also rotation with the male and female gender that we have. That way you guarantee that political parties can field women. So you have 17 candidates and you have just 1 female. Even the deputy governorship candidates, you have only 4 females. That's not good enough. Last 2020, we had 2 females. And that's what is also happening at the National Assembly. You can see that the number of women who are taking up these political positions are dwindling. It is not that the number of women who are participating in politics are dwindling, because at the end of the day, when you take the statistics of men and women that are registered, or men and women that come out to vote, it is more women that come out to vote. So we need to be able to get to the political parties. And you know that if you don't get the nomination of a political party, you can't stand, because the Constitution, the Electoral Act, says that it is the political party that fields a candidate. So you cannot even talk about independent candidates. This is a political party that will go through its processes and ensure that a female emerge as their flag bearer. If they don't do that, females will not emerge. So we need to go back to our drawing table, look at what the political party manifestos and constitutions are saying. And if they're not saying that the rotation should be between the male gender and the female gender, we have the 5 gender bills that were thrown out by the National Assembly. So let's go back to the state. Let's go back to the political parties to ensure that they capture that within their constitution. And maybe that way we can begin to make progress with what is happening. I asked a few journalists and I said, oh, you know, there's a female candidate that is on the ballot. You people are not projecting her. It said, oh, she doesn't have money. So the issue of money politics, look at how much...
That does not include the NTA, by the way. I remember interviewing her on News Extra. Patience Ndidiki was actually on News Extra. So
yes, exactly. That doesn't include the NTA, but we need to do more. We need to do more for our female candidates. We need to support them. We know that our political processes have been so monetized, and these women don't have that money power to do as much. Apart from the campaigns, apart from settling party leaders, you know that you also need to now bring money to buy votes rather than ensuring that proper campaigns are done, people are educated along those lines. It is actually the responsibility of political parties to ensure that they educate the electorate so that they can come out to vote for them. But rather, what you see is that they are amassing wealth to buy votes. So that's quite unfortunate.
all right, Faith, stay with you just quickly. Of course, Nick Dezang is here. He's going to respond to all that you have said. But, because we're trying to utilize this connection because we're not sure, if it's going to be stable for a long time. So that's why I'm focusing on you. Nick Dezang, of course, will respond to, all the issues that you have spoken about. But quickly, as an observer in this election, someone who has followed the dual politics, and you have said, you actually grew up in Benin. Let's just go back to, say, 2016, and then it was a two-horse race. And if you look at the way the people voted, the margin between the winner and the runner-up was just about, say, 66,000. And then in 2020, the margin was also very slim, about 84,000. At the moment, some say it's a three-horse race, but all we know is that we have 18 candidates, who are contesting for the Osadebe Avenue. That's the government house, Dennis Osadebe Avenue, government house in Edo State. Do you see, a landslide, or you think that, well, it's going to be, I don't know, what's your impression? What's your feel?
Well, you know that the aftermath of the election brought a new on the field. 2020, you had clearly, but from the results we are seeing and from the way things are going, it is actually still a two-horse race. Though when we went out on the field, we saw that we now have three political parties fielding party agents. For instance, we saw the APC, PDP, and the Labour Party party agents on the field. In the past, we only just see two. So out of the 17 people, you are seeing those three political parties. So you now have a new, as they say, a new kid on the block. And I hope that going forward, you will have more people, more political parties taking seriously this entire process. And that is what we are saying. At the end of the day, if you don't have party agents on the field, if you're not participating in the electoral process, follow it up. And then you go to court and you don't have any evidence to show because you didn't have a party agent on the ground. You don't have your party, you don't have the result from the polling unit. You're not following what is posted on IREP. We always come back to square one. So it's important that we have more people on the field. I don't know if at this point, I am sitting very close to a collation center, and I really need to. My colleagues have been asking me, I really need to go there so I can have more information to give you if I am opportune to be back on your program.
All right.
May I be excused?
All right, of course, Faith, we'll let you go. Of course, we hope to have you back once you get all the information from that collation center. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
All right. That's Faith Mwandishi, Executive Director, Center for Transparency Advocacy. Nick Dezang, I know that you want to respond to quite a number of issues.
She raised quite a number of interesting issues. What is even more interesting is that she is there on the ground observing the conduct of the election, and she also has lived in Benin for quite some time. So she has a very good feel of the politics and the gladiators. And she raised, let me first respond to the issue of the marginalization of women in the political process. It's concerning to a lot of us because if you look at even the last population figures, the population of Nigeria is divided down the middle, almost 50-50 between, in fact, it's 51-49%, 51% men and then 51% female. And when elections are conducted across the country, you will see that women turn out more than men to vote. In fact, when we were doing the campaign for the creation of additional polling units in 2022. That is, you now call it increasing voter access to polling units. But the real thing is creation of polling units. Now, when we were about to do the campaign, one of the clips we used to make a compelling case for the creation of more polling units to congest the existing previous ones was a clip in Mararaba, one of the voting centers in Mararaba. If you look at that place, it was overly congested with thousands of voters who congregate there on election day. But what is more interesting is that more of the voters in that congested center are women. And they were more determined to vote. If you look at their body language and their emotions and their determination, they were more determined than the men to vote. In fact, at one point, as they were seething forward to go and vote, the center itself collapsed. So we deployed that, to make a case for creation of additional polling units. But in addition to making that, using that video clip epitomized, it made an eloquent statement about the do I say, uncommon devotion to the electoral process by our women. Now, unfortunately, in spite of this devotion, women are being driven to the margins of our politics. In other jurisdictions, they go out of their way to take affirmative actions to make sure that more women are given opportunities either in their parliaments or in their cabinets. In Rwanda, for example, for the past 3 or so election cycles, Kagame had always made sure that his cabinet is divided 50-50, 50 men, 50 women. And I always tell people that, look, there are certain perspectives that only women can bring to the table. Men cannot, because they are not women. There are issues that concern women, and they are better suited, they are better placed to articulate those issues. So you can't do a policy and then you don't involve them. That means that policy is not well-rounded, it's not robust, it's not muscular. So if you want to make a policy that addresses the concerns of all Nigerians, and you are talking about 50% of the population of this country, and then you are not taking them on board, then it means you are marginalizing them. And come to think of it, assuming you have a family of, let's say, 10 males, 10 females, and all of them perhaps are graduates, or they even have postgraduate degrees, and then you are doing something and you don't bring the female into it, how are you going to benefit from their own perspectives and the intelligence that they have? So we are shooting ourselves in our feet by marginalizing women. Now, if you also look at the recent past, I had cited this before, and it has become a refrain with me, that if you want to do anything serious, anything you want to do, any exercise, involve a woman, it will fail. And I say this advisedly. Look at the COVID-19 pandemic. The 6 major countries that were formidable in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic at that level were led by women presidents or prime ministers. Merkel in Germany and the others, in Sweden and so on. 6 of them. It's there, it's on the record. They were not men, they were women. Because women tend to be more focused. When a woman is involved in an issue, even if it is emotional, she's focused. And a man does not bring to bear that kind of focus. But let me also say that after recognizing all these pluses about women, women too, particularly Nigerian women, have not done enough to help themselves. Look at what happened when Sarah Jubril contested against former President Goodluck Jonathan. All the delegates, except herself, voted for Goodluck Jonathan. They didn't find anything good in a fellow woman. And I've said this in another place, that look, we have to learn from other jurisdictions. And I gave this example of the Williams sisters, Serena and Venus Williams. Whenever they play tennis, either they defeat or you win them. So long as you are a woman, they will embrace you, they will encourage you, they will solidarize with you. Women need to solidarize with themselves. They need to come together. They need to appreciate that they have the same challenges. And it is they that can solve these challenges.
Oh, well, some people would argue with you.
In terms of strategy, when you are also fighting a cause, you co-opt people who are sympathetic to your cause. There are also women who are sympathetic to women. There are men who recognize that women can be virtuous. There are people who recognize that women can bring certain things to the table. Women need to align and to work with these kinds of men so that they will support them in their cause.
You know, Nick Dzang, you've made very valid points, you know, but as regards women participation in politics, many people would argue with you and say that women ordinarily would want to cheer up another woman.
Yes, they would,
but unfortunately...
we understand there are handicaps.
Yes.
There are, part of it, since our politics is monetized, is highly monetized, part of it is also women don't have the money. But which is why we need to go out and let people know that this thing should not be about money, but about the capacity, the gravitas, the savvy, the competence to deliver. That should be the key. And thank God some of you here are at the commanding heights of the media. You should use your pedestals to canvass for your fellow women. That is why you are here.
But we do that. Unfortunately, the men do not want to support the women. You know, some people would argue
the fact
that you have very few men...
The fact that a man facilitated you being at this commanding height means that a man is also supporting you. So, with all due sense of proportion, use that pedestal and push their case. I've met women like that who have done that, and they have done it beautifully. In the media, in the ministries, in the agencies, they have made cases for women. They have excelled, because if you excel in your job, you are also recommending other fellow women. You are saying that if we are given this opportunity, we will excel.
You see, Nick Dzang, I'm going to pause you, but of course, we're going to continue.
And don't forget that power is not given; it is taken. So don't wait. If you think you wait forever. You wait till thy kingdom come, because these men are not ready to concede. So you must also be prepared to fight. And to fight, you must devise strategies, like I said. There are men out there who are ready to give you opportunities. They know that you can bring something to the table.
You talked about fighting. Very few women
I'm
fight.
not talking of fighting in the physical sense.
A lot of women,
I'm not talking about...
want the transition to be as peaceful as possible.
I'm not saying that...
Let me pause you on that point. The resident electoral commissioner in Edo State, Anugbom Onwoha, has actually spoken on the election. Now, he spoke about extension of voting in areas where materials did not arrive on time, and restated that the votes of the people will count. Let's quickly hear him.
My assessment is that we have over 92%. There are some hitches in some areas, and that is why the Commission has extended the time. Ordinarily, it's supposed to stop at 2:30, but because some materials have arrived late in some polling units, the Commission, in their wisdom, decided to extend it, and that every vote that there should not be disqualified. And that is why we have not been receiving this thing. We allow everybody to vote. And so far, I'm happy with the turnout.
They're taken by how many hours?
You can't say hours. The last person on the line votes.
Okay.
So if I tell you now 1 hour, and we have maybe 300 persons, you know that it's not possible. So the last person votes.
Okay, so I don't know whether it can be adduced to the rainfall, but averagely there was no turnout. I don't know. Did the commission do enough of publicity?
The commission is not a rainmaker. we did enough publicity. The political parties did. We had meetings with the political and the stakeholders. But today, rain decided to fall. Can you stop God? So it's not our fault. If you're interested in the political process, the electoral process, rain will not make you to come, not to come. Please, we have done our own. Apart from one hitches, but one more hitches here or there, where the material did not come as a result of the road transport union disappointed us. So I want to say, in general, that we are so satisfied. We are so satisfied. In our part, we are so satisfied. 92% is not, a, but you can score us A. We are happy.
You enter my shot now and stop.
The resident electoral commissioner there, Anugbum Onoha, scoring INEC AAA. Well, you ask yourself, is it to score himself or those who took part in the election and Edo people in general to score him? Anyways, of course, all of that scoring would begin to show in the coming hours as we see results and when all those who observe the elections give us, their feedbacks. All right, he spoke about the extension of voting time. I just want to ask Nick Dezang, going forward, do you think extension of voting time would help in this country? I'm just thinking that would that not mean that voters will now begin to show some form of laxity, or if you like, not keeping to time, African man time, such that you're supposed to be there at 8:30, do the whatever, and then close by 2:30?
You see, the point is to accommodate those who could not come because of the rains, and also where voting did not also...
But the REC also said that if you're determined to vote, the rain wouldn't stop you.
Well, yes, there were people who were not deterred by the rains, quite okay. But of course, you couldn't say, since it rained across the state, the volume of rain may not be the same. So, but all the same, what is heartwarming is that people still turn out much later after the rains.
But talking about extension of voting time, during the general elections, of course, we did see that in some polling units, there was also extension of voting time. I'm just saying, going forward in our election process, would the extension be for good? I'm asking because,
yes.
We had some guests talk about, voting taking place late in the night. You need power, you need a lot of things, and then, all kinds of magic can happen.
I think I need to pause you.
You cannot pause me. You cannot pause you.
You see, the thing is this. The INEC guidelines provide for extension of time. And the whole idea is to address some of
extension without limits, a blank extension?
No,
so to 10 p.m., 11?
It's not without limit. It's not inordinate. There are limits, which is that the last person on the queue who has been registered, accredited, should vote. So there's a limit. If you come much later, you cannot, after the whole thing is over, you cannot say that you must vote. But if you look at what happened in July in the UK, voting started as early as 7. And it extended until 10 p.m. And it's provided for in their law. And, and you see, you are dealing with a dispensation where voting is routine. So they make allowances for people to come and vote at their pace. So you can take off from your office, go and vote, according to how it suits you, and you go back. So long as you do it between 7 o'clock and 10 p.m., and you have the requisite identification, to show that you are a voter. So we will reach there. And you see, but the point is our laws also try to accommodate our peculiarities. And the fact that there are, like I had said earlier today, that there are certain things that are not actually under the control of INEC. INEC depends on resources domiciled elsewhere, for which it has no total control. And INEC has to hire vehicles. It does not have, if it had to now have vehicles to conduct elections, then perhaps it will have to run a transport company. And that requires another expertise. It requires another bureaucracy. So you depend on those resources. INEC does not have security agencies. INEC has to depend on all the security agencies in Nigeria, but led by the police. The law says it is the police, because it's a civil thing. Election is a civil thing. So the police are more disposed, by virtue of their training, to deal with civil matters. The military, whenever they are called upon, they are at what we call the outer security cordon. They are in the third concentric ring. The first being the polling unit, the second being the ward, then the third at the far remove of the ward or at the borders in the instance of an off-cycle governorship elections. We have seen in the past where people import others from other states to come and disrupt elections. So you need the army to be in these borders to checkmate those who are likely to come and infiltrate and disrupt the elections. But by and by, as things improve, there is trust, either way. The EMB is trusted. Politicians also behave themselves, because most of the time it is the members of the political class who are so desperate, who are so unscrupulous, who disrupt elections.
All right, you just read my mind as regards the politicians and political parties. Looking at the feedback we've gotten from Edo elections, would you say that the political parties and the politicians, carry themselves well? And
well, in fact, I was going to speak to that, arising from Wadishi's contributions, which is that, when you bring ant-infested wood, you invite a visit of lizards, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if, for example, before the conduct of this election, there were no instances of violence, there was no bellicose or violent rhetoric, there was no instigation of thugs to misbehave, there were no cultic activities, and so on and so forth, anything to suggest that the elections can be disrupted, then it is unlikely that we would have seen the kind of massive deployment of security agencies. So sometimes when these things escalate, you have to respond, and you can only respond by escalating. A situation where you are going to conduct an election, and a political party is convening or inaugurating a campaign council made up of like 50, 60 people. And these people will also come with their own supporters, with their own support staff, and so on and so forth. And with certain tendencies that are not palatable, then you have to take action to checkmate these kinds of people. And that is why the thing becomes something like war, whereas it ought not to be. It only needs to resemble war by virtue of the number of people you deploy. For example, in Nigeria, when we conduct elections, presidential election, we deploy about millions of people to conduct elections nationwide. One of the biggest military deployments, Allied deployment in 1944, which determined the conduct of the Second World War. The entirety of the people who fought in that war theater in Normandy and so on, they were not more than 200,000 soldiers. But in a presidential election, in a national election, we deploy close to, we have almost 150,000 polling units. And in each polling unit, you are deploying, annex staff alone, four staff to man a polling unit. So you multiply that by 4. The police are also deploying. Other security agencies are deploying.
Very expensive.
INEC is also deploying people to supervise the conduct of the elections. Observers are deploying. The media are deploying. So by the time you put it together, you are talking about nearly 2 million people doing election duty. But because at that time, these negative tendencies that could disrupt elections are thinly spread. And even though the security agencies themselves are also thinly spread across the polling units, you hardly have these kinds of.
So would you now say that off-cycle elections are becoming a problem? Because, as at the time off-cycle elections started, Edo started it, of course. There was this joy that with off-cycle elections, INEC could perform better and all of that. But with all these challenges,
there are pluses and there are minuses. Because off-cycle run and by elections also allow INEC to test and pilot their processes. to fine-tune and hone their processes. Like the IRF, for example, was first deployed in a by-election in Nasarawa State, in a House of Assembly by-election in Nasarawa State. And there were challenges when it was first deployed. In fact, the beavers too, at one point, before, I think there was a technology that was deployed before beavers, and then it was upgraded to beavers. Now, the two technologies were test run in the Nasarawa State House of Assembly elections. And then with time, you know, there had been incremental improvement in these technologies. And you can see in the conduct of the Edo governorship elections that there are no complaints about beavers. Why? Because INEC has, by virtue of these elections, taken time to now correct and improve on these technologies. Also, they have also discovered that you need to train and to retrain and to do refresher training. You need to remind these young folks, because sometimes when you are training them, they will be using their Android phones. They won't give the requisite attention. They will assume, they know it. Is it not like this one? And then on election day, they are clueless about how to use it. So you have to keep reminding them, you know. And as at the last time, I think the EU was also trying to put in place, since most of these young people use Android phones, they were trying to develop an app that will remind you about the processes. So if you have issues, all you need to do is to, you know, log onto that app, and it will remind you of the processes of using the beavers. So you can see that these elections too are useful. They serve the purpose of testing these technologies and innovations and reforms. In fact, in one of the elections in Anambra, you know, when color coding of ballot papers and result sheets was first introduced to checkmate rigging, it was a plus and a minus, because in Idemili North, there was a curious incident. One of the electoral officers who took training for granted did not partake in the training. So he thought it was the old ballot papers that were going to be used. So on election day, when he received the materials, he saw something that was strange. Unfortunately, he was a sufferer. He had high blood pressure. So his blood pressure just shot up. And then he took medication for it to go down before he will now revisit what the strange thing he saw. And he switched off his handset and locked himself up. So stakeholders, you know, now started complaining loudly that INEC was up to something. Whereas at the
But why would INEC allow such an officer, you know, go ahead to the election if he didn't take part in the training in the first place?
Yeah, but because you had other people deputizing for him. But on that day, he did not even take them into confidence. He just switched off his handset, locked himself up. He thought that after a while, when his BP went down, he would now revisit the thing and now distribute the materials. And then there was a lot of outcry. You know, in fact, we had to rush to NTA and AIT to now begin to explain. And even as we were explaining, we didn't have access to him.
Wow, that would have been
you see, so this is why I keep saying you use this opportunity
to test the waters.
To test the waters, to do pilots, to test the technologies that you will now deploy in the national election. Because if there are challenges, you continue to correct them. You continue to correct them until you perfect. And then you discover that no matter how good a technology is, if someone is not trained to use it, you cannot deploy it. Each time I come to NTA, for example, I see a new innovation. I don't know what you call this, but assuming you were not put through as to how to use it, assuming, for example, I'm asked to now go and use it, I won't know how to use it because I have not been trained.
Anyways.
So you see, training is key.
Key, yes.
And you could see that in this election, there was a conscious effort to do another refresher training in cognizance of the fact that there are tendencies among the staff that you are deploying that is also a negative. So you need to do that And let me tell you, even before the refresher, normally at the racks, at the registration area centers in the night while they sleep, the electoral officers will go through the process all over again with the ad hoc staff. I've been a witness. I've seen it severally. You know, we now go, we insist on the EOs explaining to them. They will take 20, 30 minutes. You know, it's like in the military, when you are going for a mission, in spite of the briefing you get from your commander, before you now proceed, you'll be reminded again. Because in any mission, if the message is not clear, you mess up.
True.
So we do that.
But talking about this mission and talking about the number of ad hoc staff INEC recruited, you know, there's some, questions in some quarters as regards the number. You know, some say, well, because it's an off-cycle election, you're able to get such numbers. So what a general election where you cannot get that number? So what happens?
No, INEC has never lacked those numbers. But
why should it be that high?
Well, the figures are, the configuration is very straight. In each polling unit, you need 4 persons to man. You need 4 presiding officers. The PSO and other...
So does it mean that the number of polling units is also a disadvantage to INEC in some way?
No, it's not a disadvantage because the more polling units you have, the more voters have access to them. And you see, when polling units are congested, number 1, it makes room for disruption of the process. Number 2, it makes the voting an unpleasant experience. Number 3, some people keep away from the voting centers because they cannot stand the congestion. So it's a win-win.
But in terms of cost and training of this ad hoc staff...
Well, you have to win some and lose some. You can't have it both ways. You can't eat your cake and have it. But the thing is that the more people you have and you assign them definitely, each person has roles to play. The presiding officer coordinates the other assistant presiding officers, and each person has what to do. There is someone who sorts the ballots. There is someone who arranges the ballots, someone who arranges the voting cubicle and makes sure that people queue up properly, you know. And there is somebody who also makes sure that they come and get accredited. He does the accreditation. So there is division of labor.
All right, division
So it's not as if they just come and sit there. And there's something, what she raised, which I want to address. She said someone came and proclaimed that he was ready to give some money at a particular polling unit.
And nothing happened to
and
the
nothing
person.
happened. I think by law, the presiding officer is in charge of each polling unit. So
is the presiding officer a staff of INEC?
Yes. Once you are involved in an election, ad hoc or permanent staff, you are a staff of INEC for that period. And you swear to an oath of neutrality. After being trained, you must swear to an oath of neutrality. Now, it is the responsibility of the presiding officer to order the policeman to arrest that offender. So the presiding officer derelicted in his duty. It is possible he didn't even know that it is his duty, but it is his duty. You see in other jurisdictions, in India, for example, during the conduct of elections, the chief electoral commissioner takes care of security for the period of the conduct of the election. All the security agencies involved in that election take orders from him. So, but it is not so here. That is why, like I told you, there are certain things that are not within the purview or ambit of the INEC chairman. And he has to depend on the support of other agencies. And we've always said any election, because it involves a legion of stakeholders. In terms of security agencies alone, all the security agencies in Nigeria, federally owned, not the vigilantes and so on, all the federally owned security agencies are involved in elections.
I agree. Nick Dzang, of course, you want to speak positively as regards what INEC is doing, being a former staff yourself. But you see, some people who will criticize the efforts of INEC who want to look at the ad hoc staff that are being recruited, the process which they are being recruited, what their welfare is like, and what is the guarantee that they will not compromise on election day. Because, a lot of things can actually happen. For example, in a state election, 18,000 ad hoc staff. These are people you just recruit in short term. You do not know their backgrounds, you do not know who their relatives are, or what political parties, or if they have political affiliations. These, of course, are raising some questions in some quarters. But I'll pause you on that. Let's join Ezenwa Nwagu now. He joins us via Zoom. Ezenwa Nwagu, it's good to see you. I saw you on Friday without your red cap. I'm seeing you again today, Saturday, without your red cap. I missed that look. By the way, how are you doing and how is Benin City? How has it been monitoring the election in Edo State? Ezenwa, can you hear me? I cannot hear you, Ezenwa. All right, I'm sure we'll fix that connection. I want to hear you, honestly. I know what you have experienced on the field in those states, being an observer yourself. All right, so I'll come back here to Nick Dzang. I was raising questions about ad hoc staff.
And you see, when you stretch certain things too much.
Just a minute, I'll let you continue. Ezenwa Nwagu, if you can hear me, could you please unmute your audio just so we can hear you over here?
Can you hear me now?
Of course.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, Ezenwa Nwagu, loud and clear. And I'm excited to hear you and see you again today. So let us know, how has it been like, monitoring the elections? What did you observe? What did you see? What did you hear? And what's your feedback?
I'm unmuted.
All right, looks like that connection needs to be perfected before we can, get all the feelers from Ezenwa Nwagu, who is the chairman of Partners for Electoral Reform. So Nick Dzang, I'm back to you. You were about to respond to all the issues about ad hoc staff and recruitment and all.
You see, there are certain things you don't overstretch. Not because you don't need to do them, but because if you do them, there will be challenges. In the sense that we cannot import people from elsewhere to conduct elections for us. We can only use Nigerians. That's number one. Number two, most of the ad hoc staff being deployed are members of the National Youth Service Corps. And when we started the pilot of using members of the NYSC in 2008, it was in recognition of the fact that our youths were a huge resource and they had integrity. And there are guardrails. They are among those that you could checkmate. There are also those that are well educated. So it's easy for us to train them and to deploy them and to achieve our mission. And since we started deploying members of the NYS, it's not as if we've not had issues. But the issues are not such as to make deploying them unnecessary.
Okay.
Now, secondly,
I think I'll pause your thought on that because I'm connecting with Ezenwa Nwagu via Zoom, and you know what network can be like. Ezenwa, I hope you can hear me now, and I hope I can also hear you. I'd like you to give us your feedback as to what you see, what you saw, what you heard on the field monitoring the elections today.
Thank you so much for having me, and greetings to the man I call Organic. I think he's doing a great job. I've listened to him a bit. I think that I did say when we were talking a few days ago that perhaps some of the predictions of the Armageddon that we thought Edo election will not come to pass. I remember saying that on Friday when I spoke with you.
Yes.
We've had weather interrupted a bit for close to 3 hours today, and it probably had some impact in early deployments, especially to far-to-reach places. The Yaga data that is available talked about INEC officials being present by 7:30 in 41%, and 17% at about 8:30. And the reason for that was not far-fetched. I went to a rack center by 7 a.m. in the morning. INEC officials were there waiting to be transported to the various polling units but the security agencies were not available to escort them. And they came in barely around 8:30 to 9 o'clock. That is to reinforce the fact that the multi-stakeholder nature of elections makes it that any of the stakeholders that they release in the responsibilities impacts on punctuality and the punctuality index. And in this case, opening of polls had to. And then there were shuttles in the sense that the buses were probably not sufficient. They had to do return to drop people, come back, pick people, and all of that has its implications. But what is good news is that INEC has also issued a statement that everyone who has been on the line and is ready to vote will be allowed to vote no matter what time it is. The answer to this is also the use of bribe voters in some local governments. And that is something that diminishes the integrity of the electoral process. And all of these have been taught. We over-expect everywhere that I've talked today. The question will be, what is INEC? What is security? But nobody asks what the subtract from the efforts of the different stakeholders who want to see a free, fair, credible, inclusive, always able to put the feet of the politicians and their candidates on the fire to behave in a way that reinforces our need for clean, free, fair elections. And that, for me, is what is playing in Edo. Every other thing has been a peaceful process. I heard you talking about security. In most of 95% presence of security agents in polling stations. That's a huge improvement from what it used to be in the fact. We also have the presence of party agents between 98 and 95% shared among the dominant political parties, which is also helpful in oversighting the elections. That for me is what it is. Kudos to the people of Edo by disappointing those who had thought that it will be war. The other infractions that we have seen are things that in future we can begin to think through how we want to deal with them.
All right, if you say kudos to the people of Edo, would you say that you're, celebrating them for making vote buying thrive again today? Because we've seen reports and heard reports about vote buying.
No, that's not, absolutely not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the predictions were that there will be violence. Pre-election, all pre-election issues were dominated by the cult groups and what they could mean and how they could impact the electoral process. There were issues of thuggery and all of those things. And then that on Friday, Thursday, there were fake news about thugs invading the local government area in Oredo. And those things today, that's what I'm saying, that Edo State is peaceful, largely peaceful, disappointing if you remember in 2016, in 2020, the same issues of and pre-election analysis of most civil society organizations had also pointed to the fact that voters will be bribed, and that even the citizens were saying that they would up their votes. And that, I said, is a diminution, is a downside for this election. But overall, in terms of stakeholder, if you talk about INEC, like I said, in the rack center where I was by 7 a.m., I had seen those young men prepare and not to go out. So in terms of that, you will say that INEC officials kept to the promise of ensuring that polls open on time. But they are the ones that has to make that happen.
All right, all right.
We'll talk so much about it.
Okay, Ezenwawagu, thank you for what you've told us so far. But I want to find out, were there issues about voter intimidation and suppression in certain parts of Edo State? I'm asking because if you look at the statistics and the number of people registered and those who have their PVCs in Edo State, Edo South can be termed as the electoral world bank of that state because they have a 54% voting strength. So they have a capacity to determine who wins the election. Edo Central just has about 440,000 registered voters, and Edo North has 673,794 people with their PVCs. So were there issues as regards trying to suppress a particular group in that state just so that voting could favor a certain candidate or party?
It's difficult to make that call. I know that we issued out statistics about delayed deployment in Edo North, 68%, and the South, in Central or there about 38%. But the challenge is to say that you have to go back to history. And the recent history does not support the fact that that there could be voter suppression. On Friday, we talked about why people may not necessarily vote. The whole idea of voter registration is that PVCs are free. And because it's a means of identification, you find out that many people rush out to get that as more as a means of identification than for the purpose of voting. And that's why you see them put them in their wallets for something that has to be kept for 4 years. So we will look at the statistics and see what Edo North, in terms of the numbers that they have had, what have they turned out in the past. And when we're able to draw that conclusion, we'll then be able to say conclusively whether there was attempt at voter suppression. But again, even when deployment was late, eventually people have voted in Edo North. Materials have gotten to them. And with the statement that INEC has issued, I think is important. They said that they've been acquainted of the challenges of getting deployment to those areas, and they will ensure that everyone votes. So we'll be on the lookout to be sure that people voted in those places.
Oh, okay, I'll stay with you because it's a Zoom connection and that's a bit dicey. I want to find out, so far in all the reports that we have heard, we have not quite heard about Beaver's malfunctioning, and that's always the story with previous elections. What do you think is the magic, that happened with Beavers today?
No, even in previous elections, in 2023, I've kept on telling you that the statistics for Beavers has been hugely impressive. In the 2023 election, the Beavers performed in 98% of the poll units where it was deployed. So 2% challenges, you could raise that and then make it look like the 98% didn't matter. So when you say Beavers, in the same Edo in 2020, before where you had this upload, it worked in about 68% of polling units and the rest of them. So Beavers has not been the issue. The bigger challenge has been real-time upload of results into the results viewing portal. And what happened was that the statistics, because election is a process, many times people focus because the results are more partisan, draws to the partisan than the process. So oftentimes what is played up is whether results were uploaded, but the process itself, accreditation and voting had gone on in a very superlative manner, even in 2023. And in this election, what we had was that there were places where politicians were trying to intimidate election officials to bypass the beavers, and they did not succeed on that.
All right. If they didn't succeed, what about succeeding in making participation in this election low? We did talk yesterday, and of course, Cynthia Mbamalu of Yaga Africa was with us in that conversation during Good Morning Nigeria, and she talked about the fact that some people, actually traded their PVCs even before election day, and that some PVCs were collected by the wrong people. So, did you see or did you hear of people trying to use PVCs not theirs? Did that actually play out today on during the polls? And then let us know in terms of the voter turnout. What would be your impression?
Well, for this, we can't make a call on voter turnouts. The reason why we can't do that is that the same reason that Cynthia alluded to, that people, which I have rented again today, that people collect PVCs not necessarily to vote. And there are legion of reasons why people may decide not to vote. The other issue about the percentage of people who have PVCs in certain areas has to do with mobilization. We were making issues out of people not collecting the PVCs. And INEC was devising ways of taking the PVCs down to the places, because you had to either come to the INEC office to pick up your PVC, and thousands of PVCs were lying down in INEC local government offices. INEC had to devise a more strategic way. Sometimes there was a period in which they were discussing with traditional rulers for their people to come to palaces and collect, because it cannot be distributed. So I necessarily differ with Cynthia that because people collected, if it has been brought close to them, they will pick up their PVCs. It does not necessarily, in this process, it is difficult if you do not bypass the beavers. It is difficult for you to use whatever that is. In fact, a friend of mine, a politically exposed person, was calling me today that we should campaign against the process, that it is too cumbersome, that people will have to, first of all, go and check their name and then come back to go through beavers and captured and all of that. And I said it was because you guys were buying people's PVCs. That was why this initiative came on board. And the politicians are frustrated about it. And let me tell you something about buying PVCs and keeping them to cause voter suppression. The person who sells this PVC voted. You have only voted for the wrong thing by selling your PVC, because not voting itself is a vote. And that's the huge challenge. So right now, I keep telling people that there are INEC officials who hawk non-existing solutions to politicians about what they can help them do. But the technology that's been put in place has made it difficult. Not impossible, though, but has made it difficult for some of these malpractices, especially that has to do with authentication and voting, to come to the fore. And the support for that is that, as you know, these 2 million plus cards that were shared in Edo State, you will eventually see that the beavers will make it difficult. Even if you are giving them to wrong people to come and use, the beavers will frustrate all of that, and the numbers will not tally with what you saw at PVC collection. All
right, so thank you so much for that detail. But I also want you to tell us, so far from guests we've interacted with, and of course our colleagues on the field, we understand that more women came out to cast their ballots in this election, despite having 49% of registered voters and those who collected their PVCs, 51% being male. But tell us, in terms of the age range that came out to vote, would you say young people, because in terms of what INEC told us, statistics, so we have more young people who are registered in that state. So, but would you say that young people turned out today, or you had more elderly people coming out to cast their ballot?
In many places, I don't have the data, segregated data on that, but in many places, and I went to Ovia West.
Ovia West.
Ovia West, and more elderly people were on the queues, and indeed one exciting one was the 85-year-old man who had no walking stick, and we were excited about that. He was standing Ram Road clearly, and he said he came to vote, that he's happy to come and vote. And there are quite a lot of elderly people, but as you know, people mill around voting areas, not necessarily because, especially those ones we are talking about, the young people, some of these things is a festival for many of them. They just get excited. They want to see whether there are the transactions that go around the voting precinct can reach them. They may not necessarily be out there to vote.
When you say transactions, what do you mean by that?
I mean what you know. That
I don't know anything. I'm right here in the studio. You're on the field. Tell me what you saw.
A friend of mine said in Edo State there is spiritual vote buying. that you know that it is going on, but you cannot see it. And he tagged this spiritual vote buying. So most of the people who are milling around those areas may just necessarily have come to share in the loot. But making a call on voter turnout will not be necessary until the votes are over, and then you are able to compare that with the number of registered voters in that polling unit, and then you can make a percentage in terms of that. But generally speaking, Edo has not been very exciting in terms of voter turnout, irrespective of the fact that in PVC collection they show up, but voting has been always not exciting.
All right, if you say spiritual vote buying, you wonder if the rain too was spiritual, maybe deliberate attempt, to make voters stay at home. Because I know that we have rainmakers and, if you like, rain stoppers who could have stopped the rain just so that, you have more people come out to vote. But, let's talk about the people who...
But they will balance themselves out, because some people in some places will want the rain, some other people will not want it. So spiritually, they will be cancelling themselves out. But eventually, what we saw is that nature took its course.
All right, let's talk about people with disability. Did you find anyone on the field? Do you think, although the number quite low, number of registered people with disability in Edo State, I think about 4,000 thereabout. So did you encounter anyone? Was it seamless for them? And, are there challenges you think INEC should address in coming elections?
Well, I think that the INEC chairman today has his eye on inclusivity, and that has been supported by the Electoral Act that makes it mandatory for INEC to provide assistive materials for people living with disabilities. But the challenge is that the facilities that INEC uses for elections are not owned by INEC. They are public buildings, especially primary schools and the rest of them, and most of them are not disability friendly. So it's something that we need to talk about to begin to have inclusive civil engineering, where people can make buildings that there are majority of us, citizens who will need support in terms of. So is to disaggregate the statistics that you have in terms of those living with albinism, those who are hard of hearing, those who are visually impaired, and all of that. So to be able to do that is to then talk about magnifying glasses for people living with albinism, or bold lettered ballots and all of that. And as you know, most of this, so it's a function of law now. It's not discretionary anymore. And what we need to do is to continue to push for the duty bearers in the electoral process to be more inclusive, to think inclusiveness. But as to the leadership of INEC, I am very clear about the fact, but the challenge, like you said, is about the training, is about implementation of what they got in the training and whether they themselves understand the need for priority voting for aged, for pregnant women. But it is in this Edo also that we saw people transferring children. Somebody will carry a baby, go and vote, and return the same baby to another woman to go and vote. And then that also makes ridicule of the whole idea of priority voting for, pregnant women and nursing mothers and all of that. So the challenge for us is to continue the campaign for inclusivity and how that impacts our electoral process, especially the facilities that INEC uses for elections.
Don't be surprised about, what you talked about, babies being transferred. It's a dose state, and you know what they say, I don't know they carry last. So in a bid to come first and not be the last on the queue, all of that. But not to say that we support that move. But let's talk about ethnic politics. I did ask Faith earlier. I spoke with her just before you joined us, and talking about ethnic politics being on the rise. We saw that in 2023 play out really strong. And of course, this is a dose state election, and yes, there's a focus on zoning, focus on the particular, area that should produce a governor this time around. But in terms of how the voters did vote, would you say that ethnic politics is good for our democracy?
Well, I think that for me, I would be a merit-based person. I would think that such divisive and antediluvian tendencies should not have a role. But at the end of the day, politics is about what matters to the people. The zoning arrangement, in some sense, is to bring the best from your own area. But what we have found is that while the ethnicists are very strong and loud about power coming to their place, it was not translated in any material way for people who come from those areas. I know that the traditional institutions in the Edo State are very strong. I also know that the religious also has some strong voice. But if you look at the past elections, in spite of one of the candidates being very strong in one of the most popular churches in the country, it did not translate into vote. People look out more for who will better their lives than where people come from. It is only when they want to use it for, for public good, then such conversations don't come. But once it has to do with benefit, then you begin to throw up religion. Take, for instance, in Edo State now, you are not discussing the Muslim-Christian divide. In Anambra, in 2021, it was a dominantly Christian state, and they were all talking now whether you are a Roman Catholic or you are an Anglican. So politicians will always want to use whatever they can for dubious advantage. But we must be able to see through that and place the issues as it is, that what majority of the citizens care about is to be able to get to the hospital and do not pay through their nose to get treated and to get medicines. They want to have public schools working for them. They want to be able to have food prices affordable for majority of them. So if all of those things, they want to drive on good roads and the rest of it. So if all of those things work, where people come from, the faith, the God that they serve will not, I don't think will be important.
All right, many thanks, Ezenwa. I'll let you go shortly, but you see, I just want to ask what you think the improvements you want to see in the coming elections. We still have more off-cycle elections to go before 2027. Holistically now, looking at what played out today and the performance of every if you like, factor in this election, whether INEC, whether the voters, the security agents? What would you want us to improve on as a nation going forward in our electoral process?
The big challenge is the perennial issue of logistic challenges. And the way it is, we must have to contend with that. The reason we want elections to polls to open on time is to take away discretion. Once you create an emergency, then discretion plays. And anywhere you find discretion, corruption is rife. So whether deliberate or not, you don't take materials on time, the electoral officials will not have the time to explain the electoral process to the voters. How was pre-filled result sheets exposed in Edo State? It was because the voters had asked that they wanted to see the result sheets. And when the result sheets were brought out, they saw that it was pre-filled. So most times, the cry that we surmount our logistic challenges is to be able to have clean, free, fair, and election. So what has to happen is that the vendors, whether they are transport, the land transport vendors, and in the two particular states that you are talking about, you will require marine transport support. And if we don't get it right, we will still continue to repeat some of the things that even Oga them confronted. Nick them confronted when he was there. The perennial issue of logistic challenge is something that we must deal with. Then the security agencies must support INEC. And the way to support INEC is not to hold parades in the morning. But you know that you have to escort materials from the rack center to the polling units. It is that early morning that you start taking nominal roll. You start counting heads and the rest of them. That should be done a day before so that people can move on time. And then provide also the transport for the policemen. Because even if we are not having an election, the policemen and women should be able to have transportation to be able to even curb crime. So we can't make exceptions for elections. We are on election day. You expect INEC to bring the vehicle that will take policemen, take the INEC officials, take everybody who is involved. That burden is going to be very huge on INEC staff. So for me, is the support system for a week. We need to activate it. We need to strengthen it for INEC in a way that it can deliver on its mandate to conduct free, fair, credible, inclusive election for the majority of Nigerians.
Fantastic. Many thanks, Ezenwa Wago. You have told us quite a lot, and of course, you have made very valid points, and I'm sure that those who should listen and take corrections have listened to you. But on a final note, I want you to speak as regards fake news, misinformation and disinformation, in time of election. What do you think is the way out of all of this?
Well, the only way out is to fact check, because sometimes what you refer to fake news for pressers and dictators who want to clamp down on free speech may not be fake news. So it's to increase the mechanism for fact checking. And then to also use the mechanism that the service providers have provided for us to complain and to report what we think is not right. But I do not subscribe to institutional mechanisms to clamp down on what alternative voices that they could eventually term fake news. So if we get information, we can fact check it. And if it continues, then we can report whoever is sharing that fake news.
Thank you so much, Ezenwa Wago. It's been very exciting speaking with you. As you continue to stay in Edo State, I'm sure you have a few days to stay until results are declared. Please do not engage in any spiritual activity, just so you can return back
I've had black soup.
You had black soup? Oh, wow, great.
In a clay pot.
Great. So, but I was warning you about spiritual activities, so maybe you stay clear from that.
No, I'll go to church tomorrow. That's a spiritual activity.
All right, stay safe. Ezenwa, of course, we hope to have you again as results unfold in Edo State. Thank you so much for being with us. All right, so that's Ezenwa Nwagu, Chairman, Partners for Electoral Reform, speaking about his own experience on the field in Edo State. Nick?
Yes.
Dazang, you want to, react to some of the things that he said before we go?
Well, let me begin with the last issue, which is the prevalence of fake news, and which is inevitable, given that this activity takes place on the social media, and we know that social media are not regulated. They are not populated by professionals, people who are trained and who are circumscribed by a code of behavior and certain values. It's an all-comers place. And interestingly, also from the 2023 elections, in fact, from the build-up to that election, we observed that even politicians go out of their way to hire people who couch fake news and put them on social media deliberately. So there are two things to do. One is for stakeholders, relevant stakeholders like the media and so on, to be savvy in terms of using the social media. So the media, for example, civil society must be on those platforms. They must be able to use them proactively. And they must also be able to have access to tools for fact-checking whatever is deployed on social media and is suspect. Once you are proactive, which is that you ahead of the person who is likely to put fake news, you put what is correct. It checks him automatically. And then if you have the tools for fact-checking, you can always use the same platform and say it is not true. And you do it instantaneously, because communication now, apart from the fact that the world has shrunk into a global village as envisioned by Marshall McLuhan in the 1960s. Professor McLuhan was a professor of sociology in Toronto University. And he was one of the first pundits that, started studies in communications from his area of sociology. And he propounded this theory that the world in due course will shrink into a global village where communication will not only be instantaneous, but the world will shrink. And it has come to pass. So he's like a media prophet. So for you to be relevant in this cosmos that has become a village and is instantaneous, you must also resort to the strategies of being instantaneous, and also putting in the media domain, particularly social media, factual information. So once you do that, the purveyors of fake news will be checked. And once you have the tools to say that, look, this thing has been cloned, or this thing has been taken from a previous picture to instigate a certain action or to generate a certain action, then you make it more challenging for them. And then also, even as some people are ready to use the social media for bad, let the preponderance of its users use it for good.
For good.
So that is how to go about it.
Of course. Talking about going about the issue of logistics challenge, Ezenwa has said that's one area that needs to be addressed. What do you think INEC can do about that?
Well, like I said, INEC cannot buy all the vehicles that it can deploy for elections. It's not possible. It does not have the budget. It cannot even have the budget. And even if he does, it will spawn another bureaucracy. You'll be running an election management body, and you'll be running a transport company. It has its own headaches. So you have to rely on resources in other places. I think one of the things to do is to continue to engage with the owners of these vehicles. Incidentally, there are owners and there are owners. And if you want to conduct elections, you always go for owners who are neutral. You go for people who are not affiliated. There are people who have vehicles in their fleet. There are fleets of vehicles, but some of them are partisan. So you run away from them. Even when their vehicles might be fit, you go for those that are seen to be neutral, so that the election themselves are neutral. But I think we also need to, apart from engaging with the owners, to appreciate that this is national service, and to appreciate that they need to give their best as a serious stakeholder in the process. We need also to put guardrails and checks. In time past, in fact, when we conducted elections in FCT, I was in FCT, we solicited the support of Federal Road Safety Commission, because we observed that sometimes members of NURTW and NARTO will give us vehicles that are decrepit. When you deploy them, some of them will break down even before they take off. So we insisted that the vehicles given to us must be subjected to checks by members of the Federal Road Safety Commission. That way we're able to reduce the number of vehicles that break down. So INEC needs to go back to that template. The NURTW people and NATO, they don't like it. But you have to insist that if you are having any arrangement with them, you must check the vehicles and ensure that they can go. Sometimes they will take the ad hoc staff to the polling units and they can't come back. So, and you can't take somebody's child, deploy him for election and abandon him. So these are things that INEC needs to sit down with them and make them understand.
Yes, we're pressed for time. We need to go because there will be news at 7 p.m. I want to know what you think INEC can do as regards this issue of selling of voters' cards and, the wrong people mopping up voter cards. Because I think it falls back on INEC in the long run. The same people who sold their cards in this election would queue up to get another card, whenever there's a fresh registration. And that's costing INEC so much. So what can be done in that regard?
You see, like I had said earlier on, we have 2 or 3 issues. One of poverty and one of deliberate weaponization of poverty, deliberate pauperization of Nigerians in order to make them vulnerable to being bought. But the thing to do is to make people understand that if you allow yourself to be bought, it means you cannot demand good governance. You cannot hold the person who is representing you or governing you to account. And he has no commitment to deliver on good governance. And we need to be very practical about educating them. If somebody gives you 20,000, how far can 20,000 go? But if he builds a road on which you travel, the road will be there for, if it is well built, for 5-10 years. Or if he builds a hospital in your neighborhood, you will use that hospital to treat yourself. If he builds a school, your child or ward will attend the school. So we need to educate our voters to see things in that light and to appreciate that this vote is their own power. Why do the politicians even go after it? It's because it is powerful. It will put them where they want to be.
All right.
So people need to appreciate this. So we need to educate. We have to go back and educate.
Voter education is key going forward. Thank you, Nick Dzang. I have my colleague, Good Luck in Naini, joining us from TV Road in Benin City. Good Luck, what's happening?
Thank you, studio. The one aspect of the exercise has just been concluded. Results from the various local governments and the wards will now be flying into Benin. And already arrangements have been put in place by INEC, and as soon as the results are coming in, it will be made known to the electorate and the people of Edo State. Meanwhile, between now and when the result will be coming in, NTA will be keeping you abreast. We'll be bringing you bit by bit of the result so that everyone out there will be in tune with what is happening in Edo State.
All right, I'm wondering why you used flying in. I hope they're flying in one piece.
That's the point. And I hope it's not spiritual.
Good luck. And I hope there's no spiritual connotation to that flying.
Thank you.
All right, okay.
Yes,
Thank you very much. Good luck.
Okay, it's dark outside.
Good luck. Thank you so much. It's dark where you are. I hope you can get some light and, of course, rest a bit. The studio will open after the 7 p.m. news. We would want to get all the updates. And at 10 p.m. actually, I'm being told that it's at 10 p.m. We're going to continue with the Edu Decide studio and get all the updates to you. So, of course, we expect you to stay tuned to the NTA. So far, since morning, we've been covering the length and breadth of Edo State, bringing you up-to-date events as Edo people go to the polls to vote for the next governor of the state. November 12, the Dennis Otadebe Avenue would welcome a new governor, and so all of that is being put in place at the moment. When we come back, Ayodeji Makinde, my colleague, will be on this seat to take you round as results, are being collated and, of course, are being announced. Thank you so much for staying with us. To all our guests who joined us in the course of this production, we do sincerely appreciate you. Of course, the team, engineers, the directors, the producers, everyone, we appreciate you. We're not going, like I said, 10 p.m. The studio continues with all that is happening in Edo State. Many thanks for staying tuned to the largest TV network in Africa. Like we always say, you can't beat the rich. This is NTA. Stay with us. 7 p.m. The news will be on. I'm Yenri John. Enjoy your evening.